Yes guys, welcome back to Fight Energy. In this video we're going to be reacting to Khamzat Chimaev's domination of Robert Whittaker at the weekend. Let's just call it what it was. We're going to look at a few clips, see how that fight unfolded, what went wrong for Whittaker, and how Khamzat was able to establish that domination so early on. And then we're going to finish the video by looking at what's next for Khamzat. I know that he's saying a lot of the champions are running away from him. How much truth is there to that? And what's next for Whittaker, as this is another defeat in recent years, which really doesn't look great for him moving forward. But anyway, before we get into all the chat and all the post-fight analysis, let's take a look at some clips from the fight itself. One reason why Khamzat Chimaev fights are so exciting and why it's been so frustrating that he's not been fighting actively in recent years is because from that first bell you just don't know what you're going to get. The way he sprinted across the octagon against Kevin Holland, Kamaru Usman, a lot of, basically most of the fighters. In this fight, he actually started with a more, let's call it a traditional MMA style. He stood up tall, he wasn't in his stance, ready to take a shot straight away. And as you can see, Robert Whittaker starts in his karate stance, as he always does, and he actually unleashes a really nice inside low kick. And you can see it makes great impact on the inside of Khamzat's thigh. Now, this inside low kick, it's a classic weapon, a classic anti-wrestling weapon. Slows down your opponent, slows down the shot. And what I thought was really important for Robert Whittaker here was the fact that he wasn't lazy with that leg that threw the kick. A lot of the time, people can almost drop that leg close to their other foot. Here you can see that he brings it all the way back into his wide sort of karate stance, and that was a really good sign early on, because this gap here, which we're going to talk about in the next few seconds, because this round was over so quick. You can see the Timex clock here hasn't even gone to its rightful place because there was action within the first few seconds, but this distance is really important. Whittaker wants to be here most of the time unless he's here landing shots. He doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want to be any closer than this in no man's land without throwing shots against such an elite wrestler like Khamzat Chimaev. It's just not a good position to be in. But anyway, let's move it forward a few frames. He doesn't really look as though he's really trying to land anything damaging here. It seems like this is more of a rangefinder. He's seeing how Robert Whittaker reacts when he throws a big strike. Whittaker just slides his body out the way. All this stuff is great information that fighters can get in the first few seconds to see whether fighters are going to slip off to the side, are they going to lean back, are they going to circle out. This is just a bit of a feeling out process. Again, normally in game film analysis, things like that, I wouldn't be going into so much detail for these kind of clips, but because we don't have that much to work from on the feet, we have to take a look. Okay, so I'm actually going to move forward 5 seconds, and this is when both fighters are on the balls of their feet, moving in and out. And as you can see already, look how small that distance is between both fighters, their front feet, compared to what it was in the previous slide. By both fighters being on the balls of their feet like this, bouncing in and out, neither one's going to get caught in a stationary position. This is great for Khamzat because Robert Whittaker, he's such a dynamic striker. He loves to finish his combinations with a kick. And if you're stood right in front of him, you're going to take the maximum amount of damage from these strikes. On the other hand, Robert Whittaker wants to stay on the balls of his feet because all Khamzat's waiting for is for you to delay that split second, be caught in the mud with your feet, not moving, and he will shoot for that double leg. But both fighters bouncing on the balls of their feet like this, in and out, is serving Khamzat Chimaev's needs a lot greater than Robert Whittaker's. I do have the benefit of hindsight for this, and this is something that I did really get an understanding of after the fact. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But Khamzat Chimaev needs to be put on his heels. If you let him move forward, even if you let it be 50-50 like this, both fighters bouncing in, bouncing out, trying to find their range, not really letting off any combinations, just getting a feel of the fight in the first few seconds, then Khamzat Chimaev won't waste any time in turning it from a 50-50 fight to 100% Khamzat Chimaev smashing forward. You need to put him on his heels. I've got no idea really what his striking's like on the back foot. His fights with Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman that went on for longer were more of a meeting in the middle, all fighters one in front of the other against the fence. Khamzat Chimaev being put on his heels is an unknown quantity. That's why I think a Sean Strickland fight would be really interesting, because Strickland is that come forward, teep jab fighter, which I think would be a really interesting matchup against Khamzat Chimaev. However, just playing this game, Khamzat's just waiting until you get a little bit lazy with that front step, until you overextend a little bit, especially in a wide karate stance like Robert Whittaker has. I'll just get my pen again. Especially in this wide karate stance, because it means that one leg is going to be here, and Khamzat can almost reach down and pick it up here. It's not as if he's standing square and circling off all the time. He does have that karate stance. That front leg in the orthodox position, that left leg, does look like it's there for the taking. Anyway, let's move forward a few more slides. And as you'll see, again, these guys are getting closer and closer and closer when they're both bouncing in from the balls of their feet, to the point that neither fighter actually bounced out for that last one. If you see, they just moved down the cage. Their feet matching each other. Their front feet were matching each other pretty much step for step. And now this is when it really starts. Okay, so Khamzat Chimaev is about to go for a shot here. As you can see, he shows his right hand. I mean, barely shows his right hand, but he shows his right hand. This is, again, a typical... Look, you guys may already know this. This is probably more for the people who aren't quite as familiar with the wrestling side of mixed martial arts. But throwing your hand up like this is a way of trying to get your opponent to raise his guard, not really be paying so much attention to his legs, to his hips, making the shot, in theory, a little bit easier. So Khamzat Chimaev right now is doing what Khamzat Chimaev does. He's, this is far from perfect textbook wrestling technique. However, it's so explosive. And as you can see, it's pretty good here. Yeah, look, his back is pretty much straight there. Pushing off these legs. All the force is going here. And what Robert Whittaker wants to do at this point is ideally go for a sprawl, so gets his hips heavy, shoots his legs back. But it's just too explosive by Khamzat Chimaev. Whittaker does actually a really good thing here, putting pressure down, weighing down on Khamzat's head and shoulders. It looks like Khamzat's already got a grip of his right heel there, his right ankle. So Robert Whittaker's just trying to put downwards pressure there, so he can either make an attempt at getting to Khamzat's back or force Khamzat's weight and his head all down to the mat so that he can get back onto his feet. Okay, so we can see that Khamzat definitely has one leg trapped here. We can't really see the other leg based on this frame. We'll have to move it forward a little bit. Okay, so now we can see Khamzat, this is actually a low double leg, and we'll be speaking a lot more about this technique at the end of the video. But Khamzat has Robert Whittaker's right ankle with his left arm, and with his right arm, you can see he's up close to behind the back of the knee here. This is a really, really good position for Khamzat to have so early on in the fight. Robert Whittaker is not going to be too sweaty, so he's going to be able to get a good grip of his legs and do some serious work from there. Moving forward a few frames again, Robert Whittaker actually does nice to try and stuff Khamzat's head here and work his way back to his feet. Again, Robert Whittaker's doing the right things here. And you can see that he's just putting one of his hands onto Khamzat's lock here to try and do a bit of hand fighting, but it looks like it could be a little bit too late. He's connecting his hands somewhere here, and this is a really, really bad position for Robert Whittaker to be in. Khamzat's head ideally would be a little bit higher. I think he's going to move it here. And this is another thing that Robert Whittaker does want to worry about, is his leg being in between Khamzat's legs here. Now, by Khamzat being able to trap one of Robert Whittaker's legs, as you can imagine, he's going to really restrict his movement. So Robert Whittaker ideally wants to get his leg out of there, and I believe, yeah. So this was actually a really strong start by Robert Whittaker. He's got his leg out. Khamzat's head position now, as we just mentioned, is in a much better position, slightly higher than Robert Whittaker's, driving him against the fence slightly there. Got a good grip around his waist. And importantly, Khamzat's hips are higher than Robert Whittaker's. Again, this is sort of cage wrestling 101. Having your hips and your head higher than your opponent makes it a lot harder for them to get up. So, Whittaker's almost on his feet here. I think we're about to get our view blocked by, is it Jason Herzog? But you can see Whittaker's doing actually a pretty good thing here by turning in, not giving up his back. But Khamzat's positioning is just really strong. It's stopping Whittaker really moving all the way around. Okay, so the camera angle's changed because the referee was obstructing it there. And this is pretty much the end of where I want to get to on this clip. It's Khamzat Chimaev's hands are locked. His hands are locked here. His hips are under Robert Whittaker's. And this is he's using a bit of muscle here, almost more so than technique. Lifting Robert Whittaker up. And dumping him on the ground. He's going to get his head out that was against his chest previously and lift it above Robert Whittaker's. So we are going to look at the finish itself next, but I think before we get onto that, I just want to have a bit of a word on Khamzat Chimaev's low double leg, because the title of this video should have been, how do you solve a problem like Khamzat's double leg? Because I really struggle to think about what technique or what fighter, other than maybe Bo Nickel if it's just a wrestling shootout, who can deal with this? How can they deal with this? I saw people on Twitter saying, knee him in the head. But you saw the clip. I'll bring up a screenshot again here. You can see how low his head is to the ground. It'll be very, very difficult for a fighter to perfectly time that knee as he's coming in. So for people who are saying online, just knee him, it's really not that simple. He gets so low. It's so explosive. He'll grab one ankle, drive to the fence where the feet are forced together, and then go for the double leg. And once he's got you down, he just has that killer instinct. He's really always looking for the finish, as we're about to see in the next clip. And there are definitely resemblances to Khabib's game. I know that the MMA guru made a point of distinguishing the two fighters. And you know what? He might have a point in what he's saying. But the way in which they are able to be so explosive with a shot, they don't give up on the shot. They drive against the fence, get their opponents down, and then just work towards the finish from there. There are a lot of similarities between their games. Look, could Khamzat Chimaev be a better version of Khabib? Based on this performance, who would argue against that? Obviously, he still has a lot to prove, and the light heavyweight talk that we'll get onto at the end of the video is maybe a little bit too premature, but we'll get into all of that. Anyway, let's take a look at the finish. So in between the last clip that we saw and the finish, there was quite a bit of scrambling that was going on. Khamzat never really lost a dominant position. There was a couple of times that Whittaker was doing some good work, exposing his back, but for good reason. He didn't want Khamzat to be in mount, raining down shots on him. He almost got out a couple of times, but Khamzat was just so dominant. Until we find ourselves in this position here, it's almost a side mount kind of position. And as you can see, I'll get the pen out again. Robert Whittaker has a grip on Khamzat's wrist. Understandably, he wants to keep control of this wrist. This wrist, from a strangling perspective, is really important because ultimately Khamzat would want to link both of his arms around Robert Whittaker's neck. But also from a striking position, this is the arm that's going to do the most damage from a striking perspective. Because they're against the fence here, it's hard to get a lot of power with Khamzat's left arm. As we're about to see, he does do a lot of damage with it, but really the heaviest shots will come from this right hand. So let's move forward a few frames here. We're not far from the finish at all. Okay, and it's this movement now with Khamzat's right leg, which is almost, I don't want to be too over dramatic, but it's almost the beginning of the end for Robert Whittaker. By planting his foot here, he's able to get some kind of posture up, and rain down some bigger strikes. So moving forward just a few frames, as we said, Khamzat's able to posture up now. Whittaker's doing a great job keeping hold of his right arm, avoiding the worst possible shots. But this, I believe this is the moment where, or one of the moments, that does a lot of damage to Whittaker's jaw. Again, Whittaker is not letting go of this. He knows if he lets go of this arm, it's a really, really, really bad time. So Khamzat has to make do with just using the left arm. At the moment, he's just putting some pressure down on the back of Whittaker's head. But as you can see here, he lands an elbow right on Whittaker's jaw here. Could this have been the shot that did the damage? I'm not too sure because he lands a couple more here. Again, Whittaker is just not letting go of that wrist. But you're about to see what happens next. Khamzat lands an even bigger shot to the side of Whittaker's head. And this is a tell that you can see. You need to pay a bit of attention when you're watching the UFC fights. But this is a tell that we've seen before. Whittaker doesn't want the big shots coming in from the right hand. but he just ate a huge elbow from the left, and he's decided, forget that. I'm going to defend myself. I can't afford to take any more shots like that. So at this point, he's released Khamzat's right hand there. And it's the beginning of the end. Again, I don't mean to be too dramatic with that. He opens him up with a couple of strikes. And he knows that it's only going to be a matter of time before he can slip one of his arms under Robert Whittaker's chin or on his jaw. In this case, it was kind of across the jaw, wasn't it? Damage had already been done by the looks of things by one of those elbows. Probably that first elbow that we identified. The second one seemed to be a bit higher on his head. Or it could have been one of the strikes that we just saw then. Khamzat, you know, he's not too fussy about this. You can see it's complete. You can see it's covering Robert Whittaker's mouth there. And effectively, you can see his face. He is squeezing. He is squeezing hard. And before they hit the mat, Robert Whittaker's tapping. So you can see really there where the damage seems to have been done. I'll just pause that screen share. You can see where the damage was done really. Probably one of those elbows, I think, or one of those right hands right at the end. But again, it's such a dominant performance from Khamzat. I don't think you can take anything away from his performance based on that. But personally, I'd have liked to have seen more. I'd have liked to have seen Khamzat dragged at least into the deeper rounds, not necessarily into deeper waters, to see how he fared, see how he got on. There's a lot of questions that are still left unanswered based on that performance. It was so good, it was so dominant, taking nothing away from that. But there are still the unanswered questions about Khamzat's cardio, about his stand-up game, because Gilbert Burns, Kamaru Usman exposed a bit of recklessness, a bit of carelessness in Khamzat's striking game, and I'd like to have seen if these things have been ironed out. We know what we're going to get with Khamzat. We're going to get fast starts. We're going to get exciting fights. You never really know whether it's going to last one round, whether it's going to last 10 seconds, 30 seconds, but he's such an exciting fighter. I hope this marks a period of activity in his career. I don't want to see him take a year or two off now. If he does, then he may as well just call it a day. This is his time. This is when he needs to make a push for the title. And with that being said, what is next for Khamzat Chimaev? Personally, I think that he should skip the queue and get the Dricus du Plessis fight. I'd like to see Sean Strickland rematch Israel Adesanya. I don't think their fight, Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis' first fight was close, but I don't think it necessarily warrants an immediate rematch. I'd like to see Sean Strickland get out there again. Fighting Israel Adesanya would be a great fight, and they've got Australia card coming up in February. That could work perfectly. I think Khamzat deserves the title fight, but how do I think he would do against Dricus du Plessis? Dricus is such an awkward fighter. He's really difficult to prepare against because there's not many fighters that do things like he does. However, you have to look back to his fight against Robert Whittaker. He did get taken down early. If Robert Whittaker can take him down, Khamzat definitely can take him down. But if Dricus can survive the first round, we know that he will keep on coming. He's got such heavy hands. He will definitely be testing the chin of Khamzat Chimaev. And if they get into a complete war, you wouldn't put it past DDP to attempt to take down on Khamzat. He's just that kind of fighter. Anything could happen. I'd love to see that fight next. Khamzat was asked at the end of the fight whether an Alex Pereira fight... I think he was either asked whether an Alex Pereira fight would interest him, or he said it himself. I'm not too sure which. But look, this stuff is great, and I love talking about these super fights. But let's see that a little bit further down the line. We need to see Khamzat at least having a title shot at middleweight first, before we discuss any other divisions that he might choose to conquer. I've no doubt that he is one of the very best fighters in the sport. He's one of the most exciting fighters in the sport. People will pay to watch him fight. I don't know where he can fight right now in the world. Again, that's another question that wasn't quite answered this weekend. But Khamzat has so many positives going for him. This was an unbelievable fight. What went wrong for Whittaker? I think Whittaker obviously had a weakness with his jaw going into this fight. That's no secret. But would Khamzat have finished it in the same way anyway? I don't think Robert Whittaker was getting up in this first round. He gave no indication, really, that he was getting back to his feet. So I think Robert Whittaker goes back to the drawing board. He still beats most of the contenders in the middleweight division, But let's put any talk of title shots or anything like that on the back foot. He needs to put 2 or 3 wins together before he's in that conversation again. But yeah, let's see Khamzat out again soon. Ideally at the beginning of next year. He took no damage in this fight. I know that he does have some personal family stuff that he is dealing with. But we need to see Khamzat active. Now is his time. Give him the title shot next. It would be incredible. And yeah, Sean Strickland can fight Israel Adesanya in Australia. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you agree with the breakdown. Like I said, I wanted to take a look at the fight, see how Khamzat was so dominant from the start. It was an unbelievable performance. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys later.